Madison, I'm pregnant, and I really need you home. My mother's voice cracked over the phone, so soft I almost thought I'd imagined it. But the weight of those words hit me like a cold wave, leaving me gripping the edge of my desk in my San Francisco office, the city's neon glow reflecting in the window behind me. In that moment, the distance I'd spent years building between myself and Savannah felt like nothing at all. I swallowed hard, my voice barely steady. "Mom, what are you talking about?" There was a pause, and then a deep sigh. "It's Rachel. She's expecting, and she can't do this alone." Rachel, my little sister, whose laughter always sounded like wind chimes, who danced through life leaving others to sweep up the mess in her wake. My mind flashed back to her, twirling across our porch in Savannah summers, hair flying, while I scrubbed dishes and kept my head down. I was always the steady one, the fixer, the one who kept the Clark family machine running. But I'd fought hard to leave that behind. My name is Madison Clark. I'm 35, a senior UX designer, living in San Francisco, a place where the fog rolls in off the bay and I can disappear into my own rhythm. I'd built a life on my terms, a sleek one-bedroom apartment, friends who knew me beyond the role of responsible daughter, a career that challenged and fulfilled me. Freedom tasted like good coffee and quiet mornings. And yet, in the space of one phone call, I felt it slipping through my fingers. Because my parents, Patricia and James, still believed family meant sacrifice, and they'd never stopped seeing me as the one who'd step up no matter the cost. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the memories of sweet tea on the porch and whispered arguments behind closed doors. Of a house that looked perfect from the outside, but always felt like a stage where I played the same part over and over. And deep inside, a small, weary voice whispered the truth. This wasn't just about Rachel. This was about the role my family expected me to play. Again! And as the line went silent on my mother's end, I realized I was standing at the edge of two worlds. One I'd built for myself, and one that might swallow me whole all over again. Growing up in Savannah, our house looked like something from a southern postcard. White columns, rocking chairs on the porch, flower boxes bursting with pink geraniums. But beauty can be a disguise. Inside, our family operated on invisible rules. Patricia and James Clark. My parents held the belief that keeping up appearances was everything. Our family photos were perfect. Smiling faces, coordinated outfits. But behind those frames, I carried a different story. From the time I was old enough to pour milk without spilling, I was expected to help. At 9, I was packing my own lunches. At 11, I was folding laundry for the entire house. At 13, I was simmering pot roast on Sundays, while Rachel, my little sister, lay sprawled across the sofa, flipping through teen magazines. Whenever I asked why Rachel didn't have chores, my mother would murmur, "Madison, you're just so good at responsibility." But it didn't feel like praise. It felt like a prison. Rachel and I were only 5 years apart, but sometimes it seemed like a chasm stretched between us. She was sunshine, spontaneous, charming, always forgiven. I was the safety net. Rachel could come home late and giggle her way out of trouble. I'd be lectured for disrespect if I was 5 minutes past curfew. Once, when I was 16, I dared to argue back. My father's eyes went steely as he said, "You're older. You should know better." No one said those words to Rachel. I learned to swallow my feelings, to make my bed tight enough to bounce a coin, to keep my grades flawless. Meanwhile, Rachel drifted from dance classes to photography to horseback riding. Every time she quit, my parents just said, "She's exploring her passions." When my 17th birthday arrived, my mother handed me a leather-bound planner. "For organizing your future," she said. Rachel's 17th birthday, a surprise party, new clothes, and a gold charm bracelet. I sat in my room that night, running my fingers over the cool leather cover, wondering if anyone really saw me at all. Because my parents didn't want a daughter, they wanted a solution. Someone to hold the family together. quietly, so Rachel could shine. And the truth was, I wanted to hate Rachel, but I couldn't, because sometimes, in those rare moments when we were alone, she'd look at me with guilt clouding her eyes. "I don't know how you do it, Mads." She'd whisper, "Mom and Dad, they expect so much from you." And I'd shrug, pretending it didn't hurt. But late at night, I'd lie awake, heart thudding, whispering the same promise over and over. I'm leaving this house. I'm going to build a life where I get to choose who I am, where my worth isn't measured by how much I sacrifice. I thought college would be my ticket out. And for a while, it was until that phone call. It was after 8, the sky outside my office fading into a soft San Francisco twilight, city lights winking on one by one. I was reviewing wireframes for a new client project when my phone lit up with Mom. A single glance at the screen made my chest tighten. Because calls from my mother weren't casual. They were warnings. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the decline button, but I could hear her voice in my head even before I picked up gentle, quivering, just enough sadness to make me feel like the worst daughter alive if I ignored her. So I answered, "Madison, sweetie, we need you home." Even before she said another word, I felt the room tilt around me. I gripped the edge of my desk, trying to steady my voice. "What happened? It's Rachel." The way she said my sister's name, half sorrow, half accusation, told me this was bigger than a late-night crying jag or a breakup. My breath came out in a slow exhale. "Tell me, she's pregnant," my mother whispered. 4 months along. The man, he's gone. Vanished. My eyes flicked toward the glowing skyline beyond my office window, my mind refusing to register the words. Rachel, pregnant, alone. I thought of her curled up on the couch as a teenager, always certain someone else would come fix the mess. Now she'd made one no one could hide. "Is she okay?" I managed, though my voice came out brittle. "She's struggling," my mother said. Then, after a pause, "We all are." I rubbed my forehead, my pulse thudding in my temples. "Mom, what do you want me to do?" Her answer was soft, calculated. "Come home, just for the weekend. We'll talk about what comes next. As a family." A cold prickle danced across my skin. Because in my family, just a weekend was never just a weekend. It was a test run for something permanent. I opened my mouth to argue, to say no. But all I could picture was Rachel vulnerable, terrified, and that tiny sliver of loyalty in me. The part that refused to disappear no matter how far I ran. "I have work. Mom, projects, deadlines." My mother's voice broke, trembling around the edges. "We raised you better than to put work over family." Madison. A familiar guilt surged in my throat, thick and bitter. She knew exactly how to use those words like invisible handcuffs. And even though part of me screamed to stay put, I heard myself whisper, "Okay, I'll come, for the weekend." The relief in her sigh was instant. "I knew you'd understand." She hung up before I could change my mind. I sat there in my office chair, the glow of my monitor casting pale light over my skin, feeling like I'd just signed an invisible contract I couldn't read. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't a quick visit. This was the beginning of a negotiation my family had been planning for years, and they fully intended for me to lose. The drive back to Savannah felt endless, each mile heavy with dread. I rolled down the windows, hoping the warm wind whipping across the highway might clear my mind. But no breeze could blow away the memory of my mother's voice, sweet, pleading, layered with a quiet ultimatum. By the time I reached my parents' neighborhood, the sun was sliding low, throwing amber light across brick sidewalks and moss-draped oaks. It all looked exactly the same, except for me. I pulled into the driveway, and there they were, my mother, Patricia, waving frantically from the porch. My father, James, standing behind her, arms crossed like a sentry. "Madison!" My mother cried, rushing forward, wrapping me in a hug that was both too tight and not comforting at all. She pulled back, eyes scanning my face. "You look so thin. Are you eating enough?" Before I could answer, my father swooped in, grabbing my suitcase. "Come inside. Dinner's almost ready." Crossing that threshold felt like stepping back into a play where my part had already been scripted. The house smelled of lemon polish and cinnamon. Family photos lined the hallway. It was as if nothing had changed. Except it had. Rachel was sprawled on the couch, a small bump visible beneath her loose tunic, remote in hand, flipping channels. "Hey, Mads," she said casually, as if I'd just come back from picking up groceries. "I'm starving." I tried to keep my tone light. "Hi, Rach?" But my stomach churned. At dinner, the conversation danced around safe topics: the weather, the church's new youth pastor, the neighbor's dog. I kept waiting for the bomb to drop. It came over dessert. My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and we've been thinking about the family situation." Rachel's eyes were fixed on her phone. I set my fork down. "Rachel's pregnancy. You mean..." My mother shot me a sharp look. "Let's not reduce it to that." She folded her napkin precisely. "It's about what's best for the family. And the baby." A warning bell clanged in my chest. "What are you talking about?" My parents exchanged a look so rehearsed it made my skin crawl. My mother smiled gently. "We think it makes sense for you to move home." For a while, my breath caught. Move home. I live in San Francisco. My job is there. My life is there. My father waved a dismissive hand. "You can work remotely, can't you? You're just designing things." My jaw tightened. My work isn't just designing things. It's meetings, clients, deadlines. Rachel let out an exasperated sigh. "It's not like you're performing brain surgery. Madison," her words stabbed deeper than I expected, "I've worked hard for my career." I said, voice trembling, "I'm not throwing it away." My mother leaned forward, her eyes softening into something dangerously tender. "But think how wonderful it would be. The baby will need you. Rachel will need you. We could all be together, like a family again." A hollow laugh slipped out of me. "Mom, I am part of this family, whether I live here or not." My father's voice dropped. "We just thought you'd want to do the right thing." The words hung in the air, heavy as lead. After dinner, my parents insisted on showing me something special upstairs. My legs felt numb as I climbed the familiar staircase. But the second they swung open the door to my old room, my breath lodged in my throat. Gone was my iron bed, my battered desk. In its place, soft gray walls, a white crib, a gliding rocker, tiny framed prints of baby animals. My mother clasped her hands, beaming. "Isn't it sweet we thought neutrals would be soothing?" I struggled to keep my voice steady. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" "Oh," my mother said brightly. "We set up the pull-out sofa in the den. It's cozy." I stared at her, words refusing to come. Rachel hovered in the hallway, arms crossed, looking vaguely bored. "So, where would I sleep if I moved back permanently?" I managed. A flicker of discomfort crossed my mother's face. "Well, the den, of course. We'd make it nice for you." My father cleared his throat. "We've talked about fixing it up. Maybe add a door." "A door!" To the tiny space wedged between the kitchen and the hallway. My room had been repurposed without even a question, because my parents weren't inviting me home. They were making room for me in a plan I'd never agreed to. And in that beautifully painted nursery, I finally understood. This wasn't about helping Rachel. It was about reclaiming me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the sagging pull-out sofa in the den, counting the faint ticks of the wall clock, each one echoing louder in the silence. No door separated me from the hallway, where footsteps creaked past every hour. It felt less like a visit and more like surveillance. The next morning, My mother appeared at dawn, gently tapping the side of the sofa. "Madison, Rachel's feeling nauseous. She wants some company." I stared at her, half hoping this was a bad dream. But Rachel was waiting in the kitchen, head resting dramatically on the table, pale hair spilling over her face. "Can you make me oatmeal?" she mumbled. "And maybe toast. And those little apple slices you do." I wanted to say no, but the word stuck in my throat like a splinter, so I made her oatmeal. One morning turned into days. Rachel called me from her bedroom, complaining about heartburn or wanting help scrolling through baby name apps. Each time I hesitated, my mother's voice drifted from the hallway. "Madison, she's scared. She needs you." At first, I tried to keep up my remote work schedule, but it was impossible. Calls were interrupted by knocks on the den wall. Emails piled up unanswered while I sat in waiting rooms with Rachel, and the quiet judgments from my parents grew sharper. "You're always on that laptop." My father grumbled one night, "Your sister's over there carrying new life, and you're worried about fonts." My mother chimed in, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "We sacrificed so much for you, Madison. You can't give back a little now." I felt like I was drowning. Then things escalated. I received a voicemail from my realtor in San Francisco. "Hi, Madison. Just checking in. Your mother said you've decided to stay in Georgia permanently, so she wanted to cancel your apartment hunt. Let me know if that's correct." A chill raced through me. I stormed into the living room, clutching my phone. "Did you call my realtor?" My mother blinked, folding dish towels into perfect squares. I thought I was helping. "You're overwhelmed, sweetheart." I could barely breathe. "You had no right. My life is not yours to manage." My father's voice sliced in from the doorway. "We're your family. We're allowed to help." Rachel sauntered in, arms folded. "It's not like your life in San Francisco was saving the world. You sit at a computer all day." My eyes burned. It's my life, but no one seemed to hear me, and the walls felt like they were closing in. A few nights later, my mother accidentally spilled water over my laptop, frying the motherboard. "I'm so sorry, honey," she said, pressing a dish towel to the dripping machine. "You'll just have to take a little break." For a week, I was forced to work on the old family desktop in the living room while my parents hovered, asking questions about my meetings. Meanwhile, my mother started telling my friends that I was too busy helping family to return calls. I found out only when Sophie texted me in a panic. "Madison, are you okay? Your mom told me you're not coming back." I felt my heart sink. My family wasn't just trapping me physically. They were severing my lifelines. But the final blow came late one night. I was searching for my phone charger in my father's office when I heard voices drifting from the living room. My father's deep murmur, "Once she signs the paperwork, it's done." Rachel's nervous whisper, "Is that even legal?" My mother's calm reply, "Of course it is. A family care agreement protects everyone. Once Madison's name is on it, she can't just walk away." My blood turned to ice. They weren't simply hoping I'd help. They were plotting to bind me to Rachel legally, financially, completely. In that instant, any lingering illusion shattered. Because to my parents, I wasn't a daughter with her own dreams. I was the glue meant to keep their perfect family from falling apart. The baby shower arrived on a Saturday, drenched in Georgia heat. Cicadas buzzing like static outside the windows. Inside, our house was awash in pink, balloons twisted into arches, glittery banners reading, "It's a girl," draped across the mantel. I stood near the punch bowl, my smile stretched tight, feeling like a prop in someone else's celebration. Neighbors streamed in, bearing gifts wrapped in pastel paper, cheeks flushed with gossip and curiosity. Rachel sat like royalty in an oversized chair, hands resting theatrically on her baby bump, soaking in every compliment. My mother hovered at her side, passing around plates of petit fours, glowing with pride. At first, the conversations were harmless baby names, nursery colors, pediatricians. Then, Aunt Lillian leaned close, her perfume sweet and cloying. "So, Madison, when are you moving back for good?" The words hit me like a slap. Before I could answer, my mother clinked a spoon against her glass. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" I froze, a cup of punch halfway to my lips. My mother's smile widened, voice dripping with sweetness. "I have wonderful news. Madison has decided she's moving home permanently to help raise the baby." Gasps echoed around the living room. Then applause. People clapped like I'd just donated a kidney. Aunt Lillian dabbed her eyes. "Family sacrifices, that's real love." My breath left my body in a rush. Rachel beamed at me, cheeks flushed. "It's perfect, Mads. We'll be like a team." All eyes turned to me, dozens of expectant faces. I opened my mouth, heart hammering. "I haven't agreed to anything permanent." The room fell so silent I could hear the ice cubes settling in the punch bowl. My mother let out a brittle laugh. "Oh, Madison's just being modest. She's already told her landlord in San Francisco she's not renewing her lease. She's staying for good." My pulse roared in my ears. "I never said that, and I haven't given notice anywhere." Rachel blinked, eyes glossing with sudden tears. "Why are you doing this right now? Why are you trying to make me look bad?" The energy in the room shifted instantly, sympathy pivoting from me to her. My mother's voice turned sharp. "Madison, you're embarrassing the family." My fingers dug into the paper cup until it crumpled. "You're the one lying about my life." My father's voice cut in, low and warning. "We'll discuss this later." The shower carried on, brittle and forced. People pretending to laugh while sneaking glances at me. I moved through the rest of the party in a haze, stacking gifts, refilling punch, avoiding anyone's gaze. But inside, a fire was building. That night, after the guests were gone and the lights dimmed, I confronted my parents in the kitchen. "How could you announce something I never agreed to?" My mother slapped a dish towel onto the counter. "Because it's what needs to happen. Madison, your sister needs support." "It's not my child," I shouted. "It's not my responsibility." Rachel stormed into the kitchen, her face streaked with tears. "So my baby is a burden to you." I spun toward her. "It's your baby. Rachel, your choice, not mine." My father stepped closer, his face stony. "We've given you everything. A roof, an education. Now it's your turn to give back." My voice dropped to a shaking whisper. "My life is not repayment for your investments." But even as I said it, I felt a pang. Because part of me still wanted their approval, wanted them to look at me and see more than the sum of what I could provide. My mother folded her arms. "You've always been the strong one. Madison, you're built for this." I stared at her, realization crashing over me. They didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as the safety net they'd been weaving for decades. Later that night, unable to sleep, I crept into my father's office, determined to understand just how deep this went. I opened his filing cabinet and found the thick manila folder again. This time, I flipped through every page. "Family care agreement," it read. Legal language spelled out my obligations, financial contributions, guardianship rights, cohabitation requirements. Every clause bound me tighter. My name was printed at the top of every page. And that's when it clicked. They weren't just planning my future. They were trying to own it. I sat in the den that night, the manila folder splayed open across my lap like a crime scene. Legal paragraphs stared back at me. Each line another chain, each clause another lock. They were planning to make me Rachel's legal caregiver, financially responsible, legally tied, all under the guise of family. A slow, icy resolve began crystallizing in my chest. This wasn't my life. This wasn't my story. I wasn't going to let them write the ending. I shut the folder, gently, as if afraid it might scream. Then I grabbed my laptop, hunching low to keep the screen hidden from the hallway. My fingers flew over the keys as I typed a new email to Patrick. My boss. Patrick, I'm trapped in a situation at home that I can't explain fully right now. I'm afraid they're going to force me to stay. I need to leave Georgia. Please help me keep my job. I stared at the blinking cursor, my breath coming fast, then hit send. The next morning, I woke early and dressed like I was headed to run errands. My mother appeared in the hallway, hair in rollers. "Where are you off to so early, sweetheart?" "Just a few errands," I said, forcing a calm smile. "Groceries, some office supplies." "Don't be too long," she warned. "Rachel wants to look at baby strollers." I nodded, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might echo off the walls. I slipped out the door, gripping my tote bag so tight my fingers went numb. Once I was in my car, I drove straight out of the neighborhood, refusing to look back at the magnolia-lined streets. My first stop was the bank. I opened a new account under my name alone, at a national bank with no branches in Savannah. I transferred most of my savings into it, leaving just enough behind so my parents wouldn't notice right away. The banker, a young man named Chris, blinked at the numbers on his screen. "Big changes happening." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Something like that." My next stop was a tiny electronics store. I bought a prepaid phone with cash, setting up a new number only Sophie, my college friend in Austin, would know. After that, I drove to a storage facility and rented a small unit under a new alias. I stashed in it the few precious things I couldn't risk losing: my grandmother's jewelry, my design portfolio, my personal documents. Every step felt terrifying, but also thrilling, like taking back pieces of myself, one by one. Then I called Sophie. When she answered, I didn't even say hello. "I need somewhere to go," quietly, "just for a few days." Her voice was fierce and immediate. "You have a room here. Get on a plane. Or drive. Just get out." Tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you. I'm leaving tomorrow morning." By the time I drove back into the neighborhood that evening, the sky was a soft lavender. My mother was waiting on the porch, waving. "Did you remember the decaf coffee for Rachel?" "Of course," I said, holding up a grocery bag as a shield. That night, I sat through dinner, nodding at conversations about baby clothes and nursery paint colors. Inside, my mind was already on the highway. I lay awake in the den, rehearsing my escape in whispers. Wake up early, slip out with my bag, keep driving west. Because I finally understood I didn't have to keep choosing them over me, and I was done being the sacrifice. The next morning, before the sun broke over the rooftops, I slipped quietly through the house, clutching my tote bag like a life raft. The silence felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at the slightest sound. I paused in the foyer, staring at the photos lining the hallway: birthday parties, holiday dinners, perfect smiles. None of them told the truth. I placed my house key on the console table, turned, and walked out the door without looking back. Instead of heading for the grocery store like I'd promised, I steered my car toward the highway, the sky turning pale gold around me. Every mile felt lighter. By the time I crossed the Texas state line, I could breathe again. Sophie was waiting in the driveway of her apartment complex in Austin, her arms open wide. The second I stepped out of my car, she hugged me so tightly my chest ached. "You're safe now," she whispered, "and nobody here owns you." I burst into tears, relief and exhaustion pouring out of me in a flood I couldn't hold back anymore. That night, I slept for 12 hours straight in her spare room, waking to sunlight streaming through sheer curtains. A few days later, Patrick called me back. "Madison, we've been discussing opening a Denver office," he said gently. "Would you consider relocating? You'd have full support. We'll handle the logistics." I sat there gripping my phone, stunned. Denver, a place my parents would never think to look. "Patrick." "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "I'd love that." Within the week, HR arranged a corporate lease for me in a Denver high-rise, with my name kept confidential for security. When I arrived, Denver felt like a breath of crisp air, snow-dusted mountains, endless sky. I unpacked my suitcase in a tiny furnished apartment and stared out the window at a city I barely knew. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped. But freedom wasn't simple. A week after settling in, an email popped up from my father. "We're deeply concerned about your mental health. Abandoning your family suggests you're unstable. Come home. We'll help you get treatment." My stomach twisted. No question about whether I was safe. No asking if I was happy. Just guilt and threats. I forwarded the email to Angela, the attorney I'd found the day I left Savannah. Angela called me back within the hour. "This is harassment. Madison, we're sending a cease and desist letter. And if they keep contacting you, we'll take legal action." So we did. Angela compiled every piece of evidence, emails, voicemails, social media posts. The letter went out, worded so sharply it practically cut paper. And slowly, the calls tapered off. The Facebook posts disappeared. And for the first time, I realized that leaving wasn't enough. Sometimes you have to fight for your freedom. In Denver, I started to feel like myself again. I dove back into my projects at work, reclaiming pieces of the career my family had dismissed as just designing things. I explored the city on foot, discovering coffee shops with mountain views, tiny bookstores tucked into alleys, parks dusted in snow. And each day, I whispered the same promise to myself. This life is mine, and no one gets to take it away again. Denver felt like a place where the past couldn't quite catch me, where the air tasted sharper, like possibility, and even my own reflection seemed a little different under the high-altitude sun. At first, I kept my guard up. I buried myself in work, determined to prove to Patrick and maybe to myself that I wasn't broken. But silence has a way of echoing. At night, my small apartment felt cavernous. No voices outside my door. No interruptions. Just the hum of the city drifting through my window. So I forced myself to step outside my safe routines. I joined a beginner's cooking class on Tuesday nights. I hiked early on weekends, following trails that wound through pine forests and opened onto views so wide they made me dizzy. And slowly, life felt less like survival and more like discovery. One afternoon, at a corner cafe near Capitol Hill, I bumped shoulders with a man reaching for the same croissant. He laughed, stepping back. "Looks like we've got excellent taste." His name was Connor, a software developer recently relocated from Seattle. Tall, brown hair, a little messy, eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Nothing flashy, just kind. We started running into each other on purpose. Coffee turned into conversations that spilled into lunch. Then, lazy strolls through snowy streets. Connor never pried. When I told him I'd moved here for a fresh start, he just nodded, as if that was the most normal thing in the world. In his presence, I felt my walls lower inch by cautious inch. Then, one evening, over takeout Thai and soft music playing low, I told him the truth. All of it. About Savannah. About Rachel. About how my parents tried to turn my life into a contract. My voice trembled. Part of me waited for him to recoil, to see me as damaged goods. Instead, Connor took my hand gently across the table. "Madison? None of that defines who you are. You're here. You're rebuilding. That's strength." I blinked, tears gathering before I could stop them. Because nobody had ever said that to me. Meanwhile, I started therapy with Dr. Kim, a therapist with a soft voice and eyes that saw too much. "It sounds like you grew up believing love meant sacrifice," she said one afternoon. I let out a shaky breath. "And that choosing myself makes me selfish." Dr. Kim shook her head. "It makes you human and deserving of happiness." I left her office that day lighter than I'd felt in years. And late one night, I opened my journal and wrote, "I am not a solution. I am not a safety net. I am Madison, and my life belongs to me." Connor and I kept building something quiet and simple. Not perfect, but real. And for the first time, I realized that the freedom I'd fought for wasn't just about leaving Georgia. It was about finally believing I deserved joy, even when it came unexpectedly, like bumping into a stranger over a croissant. 1 year after leaving Savannah, I stood on the balcony of my Denver apartment as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in streaks of tangerine and lavender. A cool wind brushed my skin, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the ground beneath my feet actually belonged to me. Sometimes memories still sneak up on me. A smell cinnamon and lemon polish, a certain southern drawl in a stranger's voice. They pull me back to that white-pillared house, to the faces of people I love and resent all at once. But I'm learning to let those memories come and go, like clouds drifting across the sky, because they're part of my story. But they don't get to write my ending. Rachel and I keep in touch now, in small, measured ways. A few weeks ago, she called me after putting the baby down for a nap. "I don't know how you handled all that responsibility for so long," she admitted quietly. "Being a mom is harder than I thought." I felt my chest tighten, because for the first time, I heard something real in her voice, an understanding of how heavy it feels when the world expects you to hold it up. "I'm glad you're figuring it out." "Rach," I told her, "but you deserve a life that's yours too." She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "So do you, Mads." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest we'd ever come. My parents still reach out from time to time, sometimes gently, sometimes with old tactics, guilt, shame, subtle threats. But I've learned how to recognize the difference, and how to hang up the phone when I need to. Because here's the truth. I want you to hear the truth. It took me 35 years to believe. Family is important, but family is not a blank check written against your life. Love is not proven by how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice. And if someone insists it is, that's not love. That's control. I've learned to look for certain signs, the ones I wish I'd seen sooner. When you're praised only for how useful you are. When your independence is treated like betrayal. When guilt becomes the language of every conversation. When your dreams feel like obstacles to someone else's comfort. If any of that sounds familiar, I hope you hear me now. You have a right to your own life, your own choices, your own peace. Leaving doesn't always mean you stop loving people. Sometimes it's the only way to love yourself. In Denver, my life is smaller than it used to be, but it's mine. I work with people who value my ideas. I spend weekends exploring new trails, or cooking elaborate dinners just because I want to. Sometimes, Connor holds my hand as we watch the city lights flicker on below us, and he whispers, "You're so strong, Madison." And for the first time, I actually believe him. Because strength isn't about how much you can endure. It's about knowing when to walk away. So if you're standing where I once stood, caught between who you've always been and who you want to become, I want you to remember this. You don't owe your life to anyone's version of who you should be. Freedom isn't selfish. Dreams aren't optional. And love, real love, will never demand you disappear to keep the peace. My name is Madison Clark, and this is my life, finally.